All right, today we're going to take a quick look at the AWS D1.1 limited thickness vertical up, 3G test with stick electrode. I've got two plates here. They're not full spec width, they're just practice plates. The bevel angles are 22.5 degrees to create a 45 degree included angle. And I've got a backing bar here, which I'm going to put on the back side. So I'm going to flip these over and go ahead and tack these up. All right, this is just a little jig we've got here in the school. A couple of modified pairs of vice grips. Holds the backing bar on center, and then it'll hold the plate. I've got a spacer here that sets that 1/4 inch root opening. So I'm going to go ahead and tack this thing up. My backing bar is not the specified, that's a good word. It's not the specification or specified, I don't know what I was trying to say. 9 inches long, but it doesn't matter, this isn't a real test anyway. So I'm going to put a good tack on both ends. And you want to get a decent tack on there. There's not a lot of room with a 1 inch backing bar and a 1/4 inch root. You got roughly 3/8 of an inch on each side to play with. And trust me, it's not a lot. So after we get that cleaned up, we're going to go ahead and wire brush this thing, stand it up in the vertical position, and we're going to start welding. Alright, for the purposes of filming this, I've just got the plate tacked to a piece of scrap, so it's standing up free in the booth. I'm running 108 amps on my machine. Again, I'm running off a little Deco 120/240 unit I bought on Amazon for about 135 bucks. That's running awesome. All these stick videos that I've done here in February have been welded with this particular machine. Alright, here we go. We're going to strike an arc at the bottom. Now, I am going to weave that root. I want to burn into both the left and right side of that backing bar. I don't want to miss it. So I'm going to kind of lightly go back and forth. After that, it's more or less going to be stringer beads on this plate. I still got my tack from the plate right in my way. I got to clean the tack up like a moron. Try that. I want to make sure that when I put that root in, I'm leaving enough room to put 2 passes over it. And I'm holding into that bevel really tight. I want to burn that bevel away and join those 3 pieces of steel into 1 piece of steel. 108 is pretty warm. I may actually back it down a couple when I start the next rod. I just drop it to 105. Just a few amps less. Now I want to make sure I chip the slag off this before I start welding. I don't need to clean the slag off the entire bead, but I want to make sure that the end is clear. And again, I'm going to wire brush it. Get the soot out of the way. I'm basically going to treat this as if it's a D1.5 test. I'm not going to use any tools, power tools. I'm just going to weld it. We ought to be able to just weld, folks. If you got to grind, and everyone has to occasionally, but if you need to grind, then you need to practice more. Right, here we go. think I like the 108 better. Again, hold those edges, make sure you're burning into that backing bar. And you may experience some magnetic arc flow as you get near the top of the plate. If you do, just stop, let your plate cool. If you're in a booth where you have the ability to move your ground clamp or your work lead, move it to the other end of the plate. I don't really have that option right now because I'm just got the plate standing on the bench, so I'm just going to live with it. And I'm going to need one more rod to get all the way to the top. So again, I'm just going to chip that slag off that end. And then while she's still warm, I'm going to go ahead and keep catching the rods on the cord to the camera. I'm going to go ahead and I'm just going to weld the rest of this up to the top. I really don't have much of a backing bar up here to work with, so I'm just gonna, fill it in. I got a backing bar out of the scrap end that was a little short, but again, it's gonna work for the video. So we're gonna let that cool down, chip the slag off, we'll take a peek at it. Root pass, let me get my flashlight out here, we'll take a peek at it. I'm going to let this cool off before I put my covers on and double check to make sure there's no slag trap. But there's our root. I still got a little slag in there. I got to let it cool down, get in there, chisel it out. Okay. But that's what we're looking for a root. I'll put 2 fill over that and then I'll cap it. Alright, we are back up and running. The plate has had a chance to cool. I've actually turned the amperage back up that 3 amps. That extra 3 amps really helped the bead to flatten out a little bit. It looked a little bit hot, but I think I like it better, so we're going to roll. Now, what I'm going to do from here up is, to be honest with you, I would weave one over this. There's no reason really in the world why this can't be weaved, but I'm gonna run stringer beads on this just for the sake of it. But I think what it's going to demonstrate is the risk that you take when you try to squeeze 2 passes in where really you should have 1. Gloves protection on the bench. That little hitch in it. I've really got to keep that arc tight and zip it right along here in order to get up through this. I would rather leave that bead a little wider, give myself a little more room for the second pass. Again, I like weaving. I think it's good when you can to do it. I don't understand the people that don't like it, but here we go. So by squeezing in 2 passes, I've created a situation where I've got a really deep, narrow gap in the lake. So I'm not a fan of that. I'm going to roll this over because my camera's hitting it with my camera. It's not wise to create a valley when you don't have to. It's not that I can't, penetrate to the bottom of that, but it would be a lot easier to get a good bead plan without grinding if, in fact, I had weaved the pass over. So I've got a situation here where that valley is just narrow and deep. It's just not something that I like to do. I don't think it's wise. I think you'd be way better off to, again, put 2 passes in there. Put 1 weave instead of 2 passes, but we're gonna weld it this way. There's a little spatter ball that I gotta knock off. I'm at 518 at the top, 330 at the bottom. I'll put the first pass in, see how it feels. Again, there's no heat input restriction on this. There's really no reason to check it other than to just make sure I'm not making a mess for myself. I'm just going to keep on trucking right up over the top of this thing. Again, I really don't like this. I'm not a fan of trying to switch 2 passes in here. To be honest with you, I think this is stupid. I'm taking such a risk at trap and slide in the bottom of that valley. And again, with no heat input restriction on mild steel, this A36 and everything that's within that base metal classification, not to mention the 7018 electrode, there's really no reason to do it. But you will be able to, get in there as long as you keep it hot, and you'll pass your guided bends. I'm just not a fan of it. I may do a second plate, do the weave, and just demonstrate the difference. So now I'm basically just below flush. I'm definitely going to let this cool down before I put my covers on. If this was a mil spec test at BIW, local shipyard, you'd already be screwed. Again, you'd be testing with 10718, I guess they're running right now. And even with that wire, there's no reason that you can't weave your second pass on a plate like this. Because even with the weave, you're well below the 45,000 joules per inch heat input restriction that would be placed on base metals in that series. So we're going to let this sucker cool off, and we're going to go ahead and we're going to put some cap passes on. Again, it works, I'm just not particularly that big of a fan of it. Alright, we're going to go ahead and put the cover passes on this. Again, I'm still at 108. amps. I don't think plus or minus a few would make a whole lot of difference. I'm going to keep the rod real tight, slight little left-right weave. Again, just enough to spread the puddle out, and we're going for just about flush. So to get myself positioned and so I can move without snagging up, we'll go for it. I was keeping and not snagging up. That didn't work very good. I want to keep the rod in real tight. Recognize that the center of the rod, the center of the bead is going to be higher above flush than the edges. So if the edges are coming over the face of the plate, then I want to keep right on moving. I don't want any more reinforcement than is necessary. The limit is 1/8 on this particular test, but 1/8 is not the limit on all tests. So again, the trick is to just keep those beads just above flush. That first pass is a little underfilled at the bottom compared to the top. Get a little arc blow as I get near the top of the plate, so I didn't make it all the way. I'm going to start up again. Shit. Right, so here's a perfect example right here. On your test, if you stick the rod, which I just did, I'm definitely going to disconnect the electrode from the electrode holder. And I'm going to clean that spot up. I don't want to risk making any more of a mess than I did. And you can see that it's still pretty clean. So I'm just going to go ahead and restart. I didn't really do, I guess I did a little bit of damage to the end. So rather than burn that off where this is a cover pass, I'm just going to grab a fresh electrode. And I'll use that one to start the next pass at the bottom. So normally I would have a longer runoff tab, or I'd have a longer backing bar, so I'd have a little more room on the exit to get out. Again, the restart came out just fine. There's no problems with it. This little machine is actually doing a pretty nice job. Run another bead up through there. I think I could cap this in one more. 3 stringers might be a better choice. I'm just going to do it in one. I don't see why that wouldn't work. I'll put 2 passes up over this. So I'm going to start with this electrode that I mangled down at the bottom. Then I got to burn off that bad spot. There we go. So I'm just looking to come just above flush, and I'm looking to blend in with the adjacent beads. That's about it. I got to do another one of these without the camera in front of me. I have to say that I don't have any complaints about this little welding machine. It's doing a nice job. I don't know that a really high-end piece of equipment would make much difference I think most of the issue I'm having here is because I've got a camera between me and the welding, and I'm restricted on my movements, and I'm a lot further away from the puddle than I'm used to being. And I'm trying to give the user, or the viewer, whoever you are, whoever's viewing this, I'm trying to give you the view that you would have if you were actually welding. This one's a little bit messed up, but I'm gonna go for it. To hell with it. Yeah, it probably was a mistake. That probably was a mistake. Don't do that on your test. Alright. I'll probably weld another one of these without the camera in front of me at some point in time here, but not for this video. I got to do some sample plates for the school, and I'm definitely not going to have a camera between me and the samples that I put up for display. That would just be dumb. But if you're doing an AWS D1.1 limited thickness test, that's pretty much the way you would weld it. Again, don't do it with a camera between you and the work. I highly recommend it as a way of ensuring that your welds don't come out the way you want them to. But if you want them to look good, then ditch the camera. But basically, that's the plate. Okay. Again, my personal preference on this particular test would have been to have put the root in, weave one over it, and then put two cover. I think it would have just been a little bit easier to keep the depth uniform, dealing with arc blow at the top, and it's just going to result in an overall better quality plate with less risk of slag entrapment. Now, I could have ground on this. It is a D1.1 test. I could have used a power wire brush. And like I said, I could have weaved that root, the cover pass over the root. I didn't have to put two in. I also could have let the plate cool more before I did it, and I didn't. But, you know, all in all, with the camera in the way, that's not a bad attempt at it, but that's more or less the fill pattern that I would recommend using. Good luck and happy welding.